Welcome to Identity Church Sunday Morning Message, where sonship is revealed. Stay tuned at the end of this message to receive more information about resources available through Identity Church. Now grab your Bible, sit back, and enjoy a message from Identity Church that is already in progress.
We took a few days off last weekend and delivered some of inheritance things and personal belongings to some nieces and nephews from my dad, his house, and had to go to Alabama to go to Tennessee and do that and spend a couple days with my son and daughter-in-law and 3 crazy grandkids. Oh, Jesus. I think I'm officially old. For you that don't know, my father passed away on June. We buried him on June the 2nd, a little over a month ago, on his 93rd birthday. You know, when you have a loss, I got to tell you, my dad and I had an interesting relationship. It wasn't all good. Definitely wasn't all bad. And I am grieving. His loss. And in that process, that grieving, I mean, he was 93. It's kind of like, you know, he was old enough to die. And he had a good life. He went out on top. But I'm still grieving. And so on our little mini vacation here, I normally don't do all the driving, but I drove all the way there and I drove all the way back. And Susie doesn't like the way I drive, so. You can tell we're family today. And I'm trying to process this loss, trying to be macho, trying to be manly. It's not working. And I realize that so many of us have had broken relationships. Okay, my father died, but I started going through a list of people that I am in relationship with today that I may not be in a couple years from now. Because I looked back and I was in a relationship with a lot of people, and some of them I'm not in a relationship anymore. And I started looking at, did I grieve the separation of that relationship properly? We're trying to finish editing our book, From Rape to Righteousness, Redeeming the Bride of Christ. And I'm looking at what God has done in mine and Susie's life. And if we had not grieved our behaviors properly and let God heal us, we wouldn't be married today. And I'm reading some endorsements from people who've read the book and know me, and they're bragging on our ability to forgive each other of destruction we did to ourselves and to each other, and we salvaged our kids, and you know it's a great testimony. But we could have very easily have been divorced. Matter of fact, a Christian counselor that I went to, and then Susie went to, and then we both went to, sat right there. He says, "I don't think there's even hope for you two. I don't think God can fix this one." I'm a Christian counselor. I'm like, man, God can do anything. And so for you that don't know, I'm in the lighting business. I sell light fixtures. I have for 45 years. And I was coming out of south side of Atlanta. And just before I got into Macon, we decided to go into Savannah for the night. And just bam, God drops Randy Fontenot in my spirit. And Randy Fontenot was part of our leadership, what, a year ago? I've known Randy for years. I didn't like Randy. Randy didn't like me. But we learned that we both loved God, and we built a relationship over the years. And then when he decided that God told him to come and be part of us, the Holy Spirit said something to me. He says, Randy has some revelation that I want you to get from him. And I'm like, he's got revelation I need? And so we started a relationship, and he had revelation about eldership. And I gave him pulpit time, and I caught that revelation. I caught it, and then I made it mine and added to some things to it. And then almost as soon as he came quickly, I gave him a place quickly, abruptly on a Monday night. Well, God said I'm leaving, and he vanished. And then they moved. Before they moved, I went and had lunch with him and brought him a book. And in that book, it was the revelation that he was trying to get me to catch. And I have actually implemented an elder-run church that he had originally started giving me that information. But our relationship is not bad, just non-existent. God drops him in my spirit at 75 and 16, head south, and says this to me, pray for Randy. He has a government seat in the heavenlies in this region. I'm like, we talking about the same guy? And so I started just blessing. I blessed him, his emotions, his finances, his physical. I asked God just, open doors for him. And that's all I heard was he has a seat. But God had given him a seat in the heavenlies. Well, I had tried to teach him the revelation I had about having those kind of seats in the heavenlies. And he moved into the land, and we walked the land, and he took responsibility. But then when he moved, I haven't talked to him. And so the next day, I'm in Savannah. Lord drops him again. Bless him. Speak about it. He's your brother. And so I didn't have particulars. I just blessed and encouraged and released it. And the Lord said this to me. He goes, thank you for being the light of the world today for me. I said, what? Thank you for releasing light over one of your brothers. Thank you for being the light that the world needed, that he needed. Third day, same thing. Pray for Randy, pray for Jackie. No particulars. The only thing I had was on I-75 and Interstate 16 is God had given him a seat. Long story short, basically, I finally called him. And this guy has connected with a pastor in a church, and he was just excited what God was doing in his life. And so basically, the only thing I told him is God said that he gave you a seat. And all of a sudden, all the revelation I had tried to give him, he started pulling out of me. Well, how do I sit in this? And God, he's walking in favor. And I was so excited that I heard God. I encouraged my brother. And I realized our relationship is intact and not damaged. But I could have been offended when he left. But he's my brother. And the Lord says, I just dropped a little light in your heart about your brother. One little statement. And you've prayed for him for 3 days. Thank you for not hiding your light. Jesus says he's the light of the world. Then he says we are the light of the world. It says in Psalms 119:105, your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light to my path. Man, this was such a small, I'm a big shot. I can give big prophecies. This was so small. But for 3 days, I just blessed. It was so small. And the Father said to me, I'm so pleased with you that you took the effort to give him just a little encouragement. And look what it was about. He sent me text, how encouraging. And it went into all the stuff, but it started with that. And as I'm driving, Ron, what's this number? Okay, we sell thousands of these in our business to the tune of about nationwide $15 million worth of that light right there. On my little mini vacation, we found out that we have 170,000 that went bad. We have 22 or 36,000 in my territory. I had to quarantine them. I had to find out where they were installed. And we have a national crisis. And it's like, it started with me. So God's telling me, thank you for being a light. I'm like, I don't want to be a damn light. It wound up not being as bad as we thought. But this little unit, has diodes in it, LED diodes. LED is light emitting diode. Do you realize that you're an LED? You're a light emitting deity. When we become, the light of the world, we're an LED. But the fuel that fuels this big lighter is also the fuel that fuels this one. But look at the difference of the flame. Now I'll get real particular. This one you can start a fire with. This one you light a cigar with, because you don't want the unburnt fuel of that on your cigar. So you go to there. Same fuel. So we all have Christ in us. And I just decided I've got a bunch of lights. I can put this on my head, and every place I go, it looks. This is the Christian life. Do you realize the light source is still an LED? Here's another flame. It needs some fuel. And as I was going through my week, I realized how unique our body is. Because here's the same propane fuel with an extended arm. Some of you have gifting that takes to reach places other people can't. Then you can go and steal your wife's little pink one. Because, women are cool too. What's interesting is that it cost me $25 to send this back from TSA because I got caught with this at an airport. But this does the same job as that, but this will come through TSA because it's a tool. This is multi-purpose. Spotlight. Some of your gifting is spotlight. But some of you need to turn your spotlight off and be a little less glary. This is an interesting one. I sell these for $39.99. It can plug into 120. It can plug into 12 volts. It's battery operated. Pretty cool, huh? Take two. Here's the interesting thing when this thing fails. It has one bad diode in it. On this board, if it lights, everything's fine. But it's if you put power to it and it doesn't light, it's one diode that was defective that this thing doesn't work. The Lord said to me, he says, your church body is not like this. Because if one person fails in the body, we cover that person. Because it doesn't shut down everything. And that's the great thing about we need each other. This is an interesting little tool here. This is a light bulb that has solar panels on it. You hang this outside and the sun gives it energy, and then you can just turn it on like this. But here's the issue though, is how is this going to be charged, empowered, if it couldn't get to the sun?
Preach it.
And we all say, okay, let's put this in our Christian. Listen, where does your energy and your power come from? Spending time with the sun. Let me show you that many times when Jesus says, I am the light of the world, and you are the light of the world, we think that we don't have the same ability that Jesus does. We think that everything has to go straight to Jesus, and therefore we degrade our own ability and our own light. So I'm telling you that if I needed this to be charged and we couldn't go outside, I could actually charge it with artificial light, because light is energy and God is energy. God is light and God is life. Ron, turn that thing on. Let me show you how to charge one of these things up. If you have an artificial light, there we go. I can hold this light up and keep it there long as I want to, and it would charge through these panels and become an energy source. And the problem is we keep dragging people to Jesus, and sometimes they can't see Jesus because it's just too blinding. Because maybe God didn't want a big prophecy to somebody. Maybe he just wanted one act of kindness, one act of encouragement. But because we want to blind everybody because we're insecure, we have our identity in our gifting, we want to be on the stage and have a spotlight on us.
Preach it.
Man, you can turn that off. But that energy source would actually power those solar panels. And there's people that have a solar panel in their heart that just needs a flicker to ignite what's already in there. And we need every one of these light sources in this body. I had a dream 2 weeks after my father died. In this dream, Jesus I was in heaven and Jesus said, your Father wants to see you. And I went into this room and my dad came and he was in a beautiful, brilliant white robe. And he had this big green bowl full of fruit. He walks up to me and he goes, hey, you want some of my fruit? I went, yeah, Dad. And he gives me this fruit, and it was life-giving. I tasted it in this dream, and it was like my whole insides lit up. It had life in it. It had light in this fruit. And he says, you want some more? And I went, yeah. And I took it again. He looked me in my eyes, and he goes, I'm proud of you. He said, but I have a problem, son. I said, what's that, Daddy? You're not supposed to show up in heaven with fruit. You're supposed to show up in heaven with crowns. And he looked at me and he says, go tell my story and release my fruit. And he gave me the title of a book in the whole 9 yards. The reason my father showed up in heaven with fruit is that he would not be vulnerable in his Christian walk. He carried himself as a leader always. He carried himself as being in command always. He never shared the struggle of his journey with any of us kids. And to our knowledge, he didn't have a close enough friend that he let us know that he had walked with. And so my dad showed up in heaven with fruit that he should have given to others on how to earn your crown. He was a private man, godly man. But I found out at his funeral, a guy that he had been doing prison ministry with considered my father a spiritual father to him. My dad didn't believe in spiritual fathering until I showed up with the revelation that God the Father. I told him one day, I said, Dad, you're the worst orphan I've ever met in my life. I said, you met Jesus 65 years ago, but you don't know who the Father is. And we get our identity from the Father. But I found out that he would share in the prisons his fruit. And I'm trying to process, because I'm trying to put things down on paper. What made him comfortable enough to share in the prison ministry what it took for him to earn crowns? But he wouldn't do it with his family. He wouldn't do it with his church. It was the fear of man and his unwillingness to be vulnerable and share his weakness and his journey. And so as I processed this week, and God was so proud of me for being a light, encouraging. I recovered in the last month with the message of innocence, a spiritual son that we had problems 3-4 years ago. And we've reconciled. And then I have another spiritual son. We had another issue. And I got a phone call last night from his leadership that they're no longer sending me a check, that there's no relationship. So my relationship and oversight of that body is gone. I sat on the couch last night and I wept. I cried. God, I didn't want that relationship to be gone. I just made a stand on what I believe was right and wrong. And I finally grieved properly, knowing that I would call him up in a heartbeat and tell him what God said. I would love him if I saw him in Walmart. You're going to have relationship failures in your walk with God. And I think if we don't learn to grieve it properly, it'll turn into rejection and accusation. It'll turn into divorce and church splits. I'm sharing my fruit here. I'm hurting. I've woken up at least 3 times in the last 10 days in the middle of the night crying over the loss of my dad. I'm reading a book, and that's kind of normal if you're properly grieving. I don't do things proper. So I'm talking to Elder Rodney. You know that punk, that elder that's here that preached last Sunday? So I call him, Friday. I needed a friend. And he wasn't a friend. He was a pain in the butt. I just told him, man, I said, I don't know what's going on. I'm waking up crying in the spirit, crying. And then I go into this prophetic revelation. And he cusses me. He fires me up. Now, he's on vacation. He's got his wife and his kids. Sweet Elder Roddy. Oh, he's sweet Elder Roddy to some of you. He jacked me up. He says, why don't you quit trying to write a book and grieve like a godly man? And he tuned me up. Actually, he made me mad. But I'm telling you, I needed it. He sent me I told him thanks on a text. He said, yeah. His wife and kids are there. She says, they couldn't believe I spoke to you in that tone of voice, in that language. And as one of his kids said, I can't believe you spoke to your pastor that way. He said, I told her that you weren't my pastor. You were my friend that day. So being the emotional punk that I could be at times, didn't get any love from Rodney at all. I call Diana and said, we want to have coffee. She's the closest thing to representing my mother that I have close enough to say, you want to go have coffee? Did we actually get anything accomplished? Sometimes you don't need to get anything accomplished. You just need to have a cup of coffee. Sometimes you need to pick up the phone and say, hey, let's get a cup of coffee. Call somebody you know that will love you. And that's why I called her. Because Rodney stunk. I was trying to find sympathy because he jacked me up. I made a fatal mistake is I told Susie what Rodney said, and now she's backed him up completely. I want to tell you prophetically that we're coming into a season where there's people that you had relationships that have been broken, that God's going to give you an opportunity to reconnect. And there's going to be some that you want to reconnect that he won't let you to. But they are still your brothers and your sisters. And you have to ask yourself, am I willing to be a small, single light with the right heart? Plug that thing in again. Or do I have to be something that would blind them? You have to be so bright that it would blind them because you're unwilling to let them see your heart again. If you've been healed and you've gone through the grieving processes, then you've positioned yourself for God to reconnect things in the kingdom, because we're one. If we all love Jesus, we're one. We may have differences. We may have wounds. We may have had traumas in relationships, but God heals those things. Turn that thing off. By the way, that's 184,000 lumens. I'll sell you that one too. And it ain't $10. I don't know. Ron will tell you. But I can tell you, this week, when God said to me, thank you, son, thank you. Because one of your brothers needed a little light. When we value a thank you of a small light, then he'll let us shine like that and become a beacon for those that are out lost to come in. But this is the value. Matthew 5:14, you are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket. They put it on a stand, and it gives light for all of the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. We need each other. We're going to come in different forms, different fashions. It's the same fuel. It's just under different pressures, different nozzles. We're the same LED light with different reflectors. It's the same light source, different functions. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. The devil can't do anything to me if I decide to walk in that. And if I want to love you, you can't stop me. If I want to be kind to you, you can't stop me. And because of that, you can't steal my joy either. So I just want to set up a website that if you need to get smacked around, I'll send you directly to Rodney. That's my bowl of fruit. I've had a good week. I've had a good week praying for some of you, knowing that you're struggling in things. That you are seated in heavenly places. And that revelation would come and empower you to be the light of the world. I want the healing team to come up. Anybody who has the healing gifts, come up. I just want the body to come and get prayer. There's some people that need prayer. Brad wanted me to pray for him earlier. There's somebody else wanted me to pray for him, others. But just come get prayer. Just come get prayer.
Thank you for tuning into today's message from Identity Church. To know more about us, go to identitychurch.net, where you'll find resources such as a calendar, media, and upcoming events. You may also download an app for your mobile device from the Apple App Store or Google Play. Then from your mobile device, you can hear our messages, read from the Bible, take notes, connect with us on the social media, and even pay your tithe. Again, thank you for tuning into today's message from Identity Church.